about the purpose of storytelling in our lives, I think about the fact that stories used to be warnings, ways verbally that we would pass down information from generation to generation about all sorts of dangers so that humans would come across. Though the purpose of storytelling may have evolved as our communities have maybe dispersed, fractured, or there are fewer dangers, we still do have that sense of common psyche, a common fear, themes we keep returning to, fables and parables that we tend to repeat and repeat and repeat. And when I say this about stories, the reason I'm saying this is because when you're thinking about your creative process, and when you're thinking about the creative processes of others, it's really important to think about what they believe they are trying to warn you about. Sometimes it's just a fun little blockbuster about the power of friendship, but sometimes a story is a warning, and what someone is warning you about may tell you more about their politics than you might think. So for instance, if I'm watching, say, Top Gun, the warning there is not just about, be a good team member and protect one another in the face of danger. The warning is, beware the Russians, right? And that may be a warning that really deeply chimes with the US government's line on their position against the Russians. But it's interesting to me that it's less so the other way around. The Russians don't often warn about the Americans in their media. And there's a lot of other situations like that. I say this not only to develop your critical eye, but also to call you to arms as an artist and have a think about not just stories you want to tell about yourself, but also stories that you may want to tell about things you have learned and the warnings you would want to give to a younger version of yourself. I made a short film called Listen. It'll be coming out on somewhere soon. The thing with Listen is it is a film about willful ignorance. Willful ignorance was a huge theme, I felt, just around COVID and then beyond, because different groups of people would become ignorant to different dangers at different points in time. So there was a big right-wing decision that the actual danger of early COVID was to be ignored. And then as things progressed, there was a later development of a lack of scientific evidence in the ways we went back to work. So it meant that now even liberal, tolerant people were inviting people to discard disabled people. Even liberal-minded people who considered themselves to be caring towards others were basically saying that it was okay if the rest of the world lived their lives at the expense of vulnerable people, the elderly, and the disabled. So willful ignorance and denial became a huge tool that a lot of people were using to get back to normal. So I wanted to make a film about warning people against that ignorance, what that ignorance is, how that ignorance is dangerous, because ignorance is not a solution and it is not the truth, right? It can't be the truth because it is a lack of information. That danger is then a lack of information. So if something is about to hurt you and you don't know, you're in danger. And so Listen was like a warning about the effects that willful ignorance can end up having, the boomerang effect it can have, and how it can come to you and find you at the end. Very simple premise, born out of anger, but I would say one of the better stories I've told. I think it can also be the reason why so many people like the films that they like, is that oftentimes the films you like that are warnings or that are presenting themselves as warnings or parables can often be reassuring or reaffirming how you see the world and what warnings you want people to receive. I think of another film, another big film I always recommend people watch called The Big Short. The Big Short really is just like a dramatization of the 2008 financial crisis, but it operates as a warning. It's an incredibly effective explanation of the events that happened in 2008, but it is still a warning against it happening again, if only a futile warning. Even if it's a futile warning, it still is effective as a film. So next time you're watching a film, ask yourself if the film is functioning as a warning, and if it is, what warning are you being given? Don't trust outsiders. Do trust outsiders. And ask yourself politically, who benefits from the warning you're being given?